It's no secret that during production for The Phantom Menace back in '97, that George Lucas expected Jar Jar Binks to be a huge hit with the kids. Jar Jar Binks' entire personality is based off the fact that he's goofy and silly, which kids like, right? Wrong. It seemed Jar Jar came off as irritating and distracting to the story for most audience, which for the guy who had dumped millions of dollars into making merchandise for this Jar Jar character, which they've been told was going to be the icon for kids of the franchise, was not good news. Now the thing about all this Jar Jar merchandise and prequel merchandise in general is that it's completely and entirely worthless. You see, the reason the toys from the '70s were so valued was because only one company, Kenner Products, had any faith that Star Wars would work. And even with that, they released barely any products, making the rarity and value of these products go way, way up. But for the prequel trilogy, when every toy company in the world wanted a shot at making their own infinite supplies of toys, rarity was not the case. In fact, everyone and their grandma had their own idea to grab some so-called priceless Star Wars toys and sell them later down the road, thus rendering these toys useless. And because nobody seemed to like Jar Jar, there is now a lot of useless, poignant, pathetic Jar Jar merchandise waiting to die on eBay, costing even less than what they costed 20 years ago. I continue to be fascinated by some of the most futile and impractical things that someone thought was a good idea to be released. One of the most common pieces of Jar Jar junk is the timeless candy sucker that I'm sure many of you have seen.
Why would you buy this?
But today, I want to show you some of my favorite merch based off the evil Gungan himself, breaking the categories down into toys, food, clothing, and no, I'm not joking, household necessities. Just a side note is that all this stuff is official merchandise. That means someone sat down and said, I'm going to spend thousands of dollars so that children can lick Jar Jar's tongue. Enjoy. Alright, we're going to start off with some hilariously bad food items. Not necessarily Jar Jar Binks food, but more so things that food come with. Now, I don't know that doesn't exactly make sense, but just watch. Have you ever thought, if I could, I would scoop all the brains out of Jar Jar Binks and drink out of his head? Yeah, me too. I mean, just look at this thing. Look how detailed it is. Still pretty lame in terms of weird stuff, but did you know that KFC had a promotion that included a Jar Jar cup topper and a bucket topper? Just so that every time you decided to eat chicken, you could get reminded of this horrific creature? Even Taco Bell did this, and I'm not sure how it's related to Jar Jar, but it's $9.99, which proves my point that nobody ever wanted to buy this. But arguably the strangest thing has to be this Mountain Dew cardboard cutout of Jar Jar. Like, can you imagine owning this in your house? It's on eBay for like $35, and I kind of want to buy it. Alright, stick around, because this is where stuff gets good. I'm going to frame the household necessities section of this video as if it was someone's regular day. You wake up to the beeping sound of your Jar Jar Binks alarm clock system. He mumbles the catchphrase, "You better wake up." Oh no, you're late for school. You dash to your bathroom to grab your Jar Jar toothbrush inside your Jar Jar toothbrush holder to quickly brush your teeth. You clean your face off with your Jar Jar towel and clean your hands off with your Jar Jar hand sanitizer. You check your Jar Jar watch and see it's time for online school. You sit down in your inflatable Jar Jar chair that can barely hold the weight of your neckbeard and reach into your Jar Jar backpack to grab your Jar Jar pencil case to grab just a regular pencil because I couldn't find a Jar Jar one. You open your computer and move your mouse on top of your Jar Jar mouse pad to enter your presumable Jar Jar related password. I love Jar Jar 69. After about 20 minutes, you realize school is boring because there is no Jar Jar in it. So you whip out one of your Jar Jar USB storage thingies and plug it into your computer, which is storing a pirated copy of the Star Wars Jar Jar's Journey adventure book on it. Life is good. Once again, I would like to remind you that this is all officially licensed stuff. Oh yeah, you walk down that runway, girl, in your brand new Jar Jar slippers. Speaking of fashion choices, have you ever wanted to murder a bunch of orphans? Well, I have just the perfect cosmetic for you. Try this Jar Jar mask. Its rubber sealing protects you and others around you from coronavirus, but it also murders people with the look of its yellow devilish eyes. Alright, so I lied a bit. These next three aren't official, but I just thought they were way too cool not to include. So, Jar Jar socks, Jar Jar Jesus, and move over Kanye, Jar Jar's running for president. Now, there have been a million action figures and dolls and Funko figures released of him, so I see no point in looking at those. Instead, I rather prank my friends with my Jar Jar whoopee cushion. See, the prank isn't making a fart noise. The prank is that you have to sit on Jar Jar. Or maybe you're a Disney fan and Jar Jar fan also. Well, why not combine them with Jar Jar Goofy? How about a Jar Jar race car so you can annoy your way into winning the race? Want to attack someone? Try the Jar Jar Sticky Tongue, both the regular and the glow-in-the-dark version. But finally, my last item is one that I promise you won't forget, because you can't forget. That is the 7-foot-tall, life-size Jar Jar statue, which is easily the scariest thing I've ever seen. Can you imagine going to sleep at night and staring right in front of you is Jar Jar? Or maybe in the middle of the night you go downstairs to grab a glass of water and turn on lights for just a second, and there he is, glaring at you. There are multiple pictures of people who own this monstrosity, and I don't know why you haven't thrown it out yet. So if you are suffering from an I own a life-size statue of Jar Jar Binksitis, seek medical help by calling 527-527-24657 today. Well, I think I'm going to go barf and wash my eyes out because I've been staring at Jar Jar Binks for way too long at this point. Make sure to subscribe if you got the chills or maybe peed yourself a bit out of either excitement or fear. Share and like if you're into that stuff, and I'll maybe, if I feel like it, come back next week. Alright.
It's very, very bad.